that are. So let's get started with doing some breathing, and let's land on the motivation to listen to the teachings and not just to hear them as words that we chant aimlessly or things that we read just because we have to. We should, while we're reading these words, meditate on the explicit and implicit meanings as taught to us by Khenso Geshe Wandak. And when we look at the Heart Sutra, as explained through Jayang Gapi Lodru, the first textbook writer of Drepung Losang Ling, that Rinpoche so eloquently presented to us to understand the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge within the first 2 years of him arriving here. So let's set that basis of motivation by distracting our distracted minds with something that's more reasonable, like the wind. And we can focus on the wind so that we can get our mind to a place that is reasonable to be able to saturate it with truth. So it should be that reason that we're here, to saturate our minds with truth, because it's only truth that will set us free. And let's breathe. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha monks and a great gathering of the Sangha Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Majjhiparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, conscious, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as true, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhi soha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Aga samara de chandara samara yamedi adong gadi gadi parasangadi gadi so baba gonja sanji gai de medoji je lodoji medoji shewadoji rai baji medom beju danji je ding oye so agere no ja je je wa da medon be je dan je wa da do ba je bon son son je ta ji de jan den da de le jo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Radha Mandala Gandhi Radhayami. Zanye Jadan Zoye Janam La Janju Badu Danye Jasuji. Nage Jinye Jibezananye Jala Benje Zanye Jubajo. Zanye Jadan Zoye Janam La Janjo Vado Danye Jazuji Nagi Jinye Jibe Sonanye Jada Benje Zanye Jubajo Danye Jadan Zaye Janala Janjo Vado Danye Jazuji Nagi Jinye Jibe Sonanye Jada Benje Zanye Jubajo. So again, welcome everyone. Happy Mother's Day. We recognize that all sentient beings are our mothers when we look at the teachings. And I thought about this morning, what's the most beneficial thing to do on Mother's Day? Is it teach bodhicitta? Is it teach the 7-point cause and effect that begins with recognizing all sentient beings are our mothers? Is that what would be the most beneficial to do because it's Mother's Day? And I thought about it, and what I would like to do, because of the kindness that Rinpoche showed me, he presented me with different scopes of understanding, because the Buddha knew that there were different levels of beings in terms of their mental continuum and different things that would appeal to those different kinds of beings. And because I don't have clairvoyance, I don't know what all the different, I don't know what each person needs, or if there's a collection of you that needs specific things. I can only go with what was taught as an overview of what everyone needs sooner or later. So that's the only thing that I can present to you that would be of benefit to all sentient beings who are our mothers, would be what Rinpoche presented to me in a very summarized fashion. So what I'm going to try to do today is, with all humility and respect and understanding that my ability and abilities and wisdom are a fraction, of an atom on what Khyentse Geshe Wandak had to offer. I did retain some things that I'd like to share with you today, and I'd like to try to summarize 25 years of personal and public instruction that I had the real honor of being part of. So Atisha said that there are beings of three capacities, small, medium, and great, and that he would write clearly to identify their characteristics. So this is a theme that Rinpoche brought to us from the very first teaching that he gave. He started teaching the Lamrim, the Labrim Duden, and the three principles of the path and the source of all my good. So this was a theme that would carry throughout all of the teachings that Rinpoche ever gave. So Rinpoche gave teachings on Four Noble Truths, of course, and gave us those wonderful teachings, on the Lamrim, and which contained those wonderful teachings on the lojang, the mind training teachings, and so forth. So what I would like to do today is to try to weave it all together and show you how all of those teachings are one pathway to Buddhahood. So when we talk about the beings of three capacities, we begin with the beings of small capacity. And we begin first by recognizing that we need a teacher. First, recognizing that we need a teacher for obvious reasons. We need a teacher in order to learn the alphabet. We wouldn't be able to just learn that from out of nowhere. We would need to be instructed on how to learn the alphabet. So likewise, if we want to learn something that's a whole lot more difficult than the alphabet and a whole lot more complex than the alphabet, we are going to need a teacher. So I remember picking up Rinpoche from Namgyal, and I remember I had a foundation in the Lamrim to some degree by that time. And I picked him up, and I only knew that I needed a teacher because I needed to learn more. I didn't realize I was picking up Vajradhara. At that point, I was picking up someone I thought would be neat to hang out with that would teach me more about Buddhism because I found it so fascinating. And I knew it was something I wanted to devote my life to, but I barely knew why that was even the case. And I remember picking up Rinpoche and him immediately showing me the path. Neither of us spoke each other's language, but he immediately started to show me the path via like Animal Planet and trying to show me what compassion was and tried to show me what suffering was and the understanding of that and its course in most subtle forms. And I didn't even know that that was going on. And I went from a place of somebody who was just filled with more ignorance than, I could even imagine at this point, and had no understanding of the path, to someone who has a general idea and ability to look at sutras and tantras and know kind of where they fit into the framework. Because of Rinpoche's kindness. So I met with that teacher that is the foundation of all good qualities. And we brought him to the Chenrezig Tibetan Buddhist Center because we as a group decided that all we wanted to do was study Buddhism in its purest sense. And we whittled that down to Khyentse Geshe Wandak through our karmic connections. And I am so grateful and so just honored that His Holiness allowed him to retire at our center. Rinpoche asked us to retire at our center, and I was asked to go pick Rinpoche up and started a relationship and a bond that never broke. So then what did Rinpoche teach? What does it mean? So when we took at the beings of small capacity, they're called the teachings that are shared in common with beings of small capacity. We recognize that right at this very moment, we have a life of leisure and endowments. The 8 leisures and the 10 opportunities are endowments. We have this human basis. We can hear things, we can study the Dharma, we have intelligence, we have books at our disposal. Buddhism is in the world. We have all these incredible geshes and all of these yogis and all of these practitioners in the tradition that are available to us at this time. So we have all of the conditions that are necessary to make really use of this human basis that we have. But the problem is with this human basis that it's impermanent. This human basis will perish. It's the nature of it. It's after you, as Geshe Aga told me recently, after you cook rice, you can no longer plant it because that's the nature of rice, of a rice seed. Once it's cooked, it's reached, kind of its potential. And likewise, once our human basis no longer has the power of the karma, which is incredibly rare to keep us here, we will definitely die. So we have this incredibly potent basis that has all this opportunity and leisure, but it's perishable. It's going to die. We will definitely die. We don't know when. And the only thing that will help us when that occurs is Dharma. So this practitioner of small capacity meditates on these facts. It has this gratitude for this human basis and gets this kind of conviction that he or she can do something, but then realizes there's very little time to do it and life is fleeting. And the opportunity is only this moment to try to end our future suffering, because the things that we've done previously, we've already done. The things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds bring to me follow always close behind as certain as my shadow. The things that I've done, the things that I'm doing now will be the things that I've done. So the small scope practitioner recognizes that, oh, I'm going to die, and the things that I've done are going to carry forward and going to create my experiences. And this small scope practitioner starts to understand what it would take in order to get rid of certain forms of suffering that he or she would not like to endure when that death comes, because of understanding the impermanence and the fleeting nature of this body. So that small scope practitioner then begins to look at, in an intelligent way, what it would take to kind of manipulate a rebirth within cyclic existence that would be as good as it could be. So the small scope practitioner then begins to investigate the karma and its results, begins to investigate the 10 non-virtues, and sees how behavior, mental activity, and then the actual physical and verbal behavior is what will shape our future existence. Our activities would leave seeds. This practitioner would find out that all of our actions would leave seeds within this continuum. And those seeds were black seeds and white seeds, if you will, looking at the Lamrim. The black seed are the non-virtues that we do. The white seeds are the virtues that we do. And this practitioner realizes what those deeds bring to me, what I've done and what those deeds will bring to me are right behind me, and will be ready to experience them. So this practitioner of small scope recognizes that virtue produces happiness, non-virtue produces suffering, and that by abandoning the 10 non-virtues, the 3 non-virtues of the body, 4 non-virtues of the speech, and 3 non-virtues of the mind, and by going for refuge, that he or she, according to the teachings within this vessel, could achieve rebirth in the higher realms of cyclic existence. So this practitioner, it's assumed, based on some of the things that were just said, has learned what differentiates the Buddha from not a Buddha. What does the Buddha know that others don't know? Why is the Buddha an appropriate basis for refuge? Why would one solely go for refuge to the Buddha? So this preassumes that this practitioner has an understanding of karma and its results a little bit, has an understanding of the law of dependent origination, because the Buddha, that's what differentiates the Buddha from other teachers. The Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths and dependent origination. And this is a kind of one demarcation between a Buddhist teacher and a non-Buddhist teacher. So this practitioner is really, when he or she goes for refuge, there's a firm, deep understanding of what differentiates the Buddha from not a Buddha and why the Buddha is an appropriate foundation for refuge. And we find in the Lam Rim teachings, in the small scope section, the Buddha has these excellent qualities of body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. So this practitioner is able to, based on studying everything about the Buddha, start to have faith that the Buddha can help him or her, and wants to be helped because he or she has fear and realizes they can't do it on their own. So this small scope practitioner has kind of arrived at this idea that he or she is suffering, recognizing that, you know, there are happinesses and there are sufferings, and has studied what the lower realms of cyclic existence are. One of the realms you can participate with, the animal realm, you can see the sufferings, and the hungry ghost in hells you can read about. And then this practitioner will have to have had some kind of logical analysis of what the Buddha said as being true, to be able to arrive at the fact that there must be these other realms of cyclic existence, and have faith in this process, and have faith in the law of cause and effect in relation to past and future lives. So the small scope practitioner is not a dummy. This is not somebody who, you know, is just small in wisdom. This is a practitioner who understands all of these things in such a solid way that he or she has this desire to emerge, almost a renunciation from the lower realms of cyclic existence. So this small scope practitioner, almost when we look at the medium scope and we look at renunciation, when we look at these different scopes, they're almost like partial realizations that give you partial results until you get to the great scope. So you have a partial realization of renunciation. You have a desire to definitely emerge from the lower realms, and you want as much happiness as you can get in the higher realms. So you have this kind of coarse form of renunciation. It wouldn't be called renunciation, but it would be almost like similar to renunciation. So you have a desire to emerge from the lower realms of cyclic existence. So you see, when you look at the three principles of the path by Lama Tsongkhapa, where you have the three principles of renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness, this renunciation that's spoken about is partially started to be is being partially understood for the small scope practitioner as they're looking at of the various sufferings of cyclic existence they'd like to emerge from, and are willing to settle for the happinesses that you know, they know are fleeting, but really feel like that's their scope. They are just going to be able to do in future lives, be happy in the higher realms. So they get this renunciation that wants to emerge from the lower realms of cyclic existence because they recognize what suffering is. So when we look at it in terms of the Four Noble Truths, now, of course, the Four Noble Truths really don't begin to be talked about in a real way until one is seeking to be out of cyclic existence completely and altogether. But when we look at the Four Noble Truths and we try to compare them to the small scope practitioner and what he or she has to do in relation to their spiritual practice and goals, it's a great way to look at it. What is the truth of suffering for the small scope practitioner? Ultimately, we're saying that it's the lower realms of cyclic existence. He or she has thoroughly studied those lower realms and suffering and wants to be free from the lower realms. That's what we can definitely assert. Other types of suffering, obviously, they don't want, but their main emphasis is to be free from those lower realms of cyclic existence. What is the origin of those lower realms of cyclic existence? Well, according to the small scope, we say that it's the unethical behavior that engages in the 10 non-virtues. So the abandonment of those 10 non-virtues is what allows us to be free of it. So when we look at what is the origin of suffering of the lower realms, it's non-virtuous activity and the inability to confess it. Can there be a cessation according to the Lam Rim and the lower scope, the smallest scope, that are shared in common with beings of great capacity, even and medium capacity? There is a cessation to the lower realms of cyclic existence. So how does such a cessation occur? It would occur by relying on path. Now, path always relies means, when we have in reference to the Four Noble Truths, an Arya path, a superior path, one of a noble being. But if we just use it to try to understand the small scope, we would say that the path is engaging in the ethics that abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and acknowledging our downfalls. So in dependence upon that, we can end the suffering of the lower realms of cyclic existence. So this type of practitioner would then have familiarized him or herself with what a Buddha is. And the Buddha turned the three wheels of Dharma, and the Buddha is brought about by the Mahayana path. And we see the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Mahayana path, to be the Heart Sutra that Rinpoche has so eloquently taught to us. And the Heart Sutra, according to the Buddha, is what causes the Buddha to occur when we look at its implicit and explicit teachings. So the Buddha that this small scope practitioner is so fond of is caused by the Heart Sutra. So we can see all of these things that link together. And we have to also look at the fact that the hearers, who are the Hinayanists, hear the Mahayana doctrine and actually teach it according to Lama Tsongkhapa's Umagompa Rapsel. So it's not that the hearers and the Hinayanists don't hear the Mahayana, they just choose to practice because they believe their scope is the lower vehicle practice, but they've heard all of these teachings. So it's also then safe to say, if the hearer vehicle has heard these things, then this small scope practitioner must have needed to hear these things to develop this faith and conviction in the Buddha that makes them go for refuge to that basis. So that's enough about the small scope practitioner. So we can see how deep and how rich this small scope practitioner has become in order to actually be called a small scope practitioner. It's someone who has really become advanced and realized in terms of the law of cause and effect, and has begotten this conviction about the Buddha, this faith of conviction that comes through clearly through analysis and through differentiating between what is truth and what is not truth. So this practitioner is a very advanced practitioner when we look at it in terms of making progress on the path. So this practitioner is someone who wants to get rid of the lower realms of cyclic existence, and he or she does so in the manner just taught. The next level of practitioner that Atisha talks about are the teachings for being shared in common with beings of medium capacity. This is a practitioner who has done all the work that the small scope practitioner has done in terms of analysis, and sees his or her renunciation as partial, because it's only a partial freedom that's taking place. The medium scope practitioner says, well, wait a second, I don't have freedom from the higher realms of cyclic existence, which now I've also analyzed and seen I have a great dissatisfaction with all of those factors as well. So I don't know why I would stop at what I thought was a stopping point. Now that I recognize that even the higher realms of cyclic existence are plagued with the, birth, aging, sickness, and death, meeting with the unpleasant, separating from the pleasant, not getting what you want, and being thrust into a set of aggregates beyond your control, and this happening again and again and again. And these aggregates that you're thrust into beyond your control, even if they were higher realm aggregates, they'd be like ours. We're in the higher realm. So this practitioner is not satisfied with the things that you and I have to experience in the higher realms of cyclic existence. He or she says, yeah, I really, really don't want something worse than this, but this is bad enough for me to want to get out. So the medium scope practitioner takes all the advices that are given to the small scope practitioner, because those advices were called advices that were shared in common with beings of small capacity for that reason, that those advices were going to need to be used for them. So they take all the advice that's been given and said, all that advice is excellent, but there's something missing because you're only having a partial liberation. You're liberated from a lower realms, but that's not liberation because you still have birth, aging, sickness, death, suffering of change, and pervasive compounded suffering. So this practitioner then changes the focus and now makes it a complete renunciation, which is a desire to definitely emerge from cyclic existence altogether. Now, this practitioner would now fall into the Hinayana vehicle, into the hearer and solitary realizer vehicle. Those teachings that are shared in common with the hearer and solitary realizer vehicle are those teachings that have to be practiced and understood by the practitioner of the great vehicle, and that's why they're called shared in common with. So this practitioner takes the advice of the small scope practitioner and implements every single one of those practices, except the reason for doing them. Makes it a bigger, kind of broader. And this is why it goes from small to medium, because the small scope is just looking at a small way of renouncing things, getting out of the lower realms. Now we've gone a little higher to a medium scope practitioner who just wants to get out of cyclic existence for themselves alone and get rid of what's called the afflictive obstructions. The afflictive obstructions are what bind a practitioner, bind a sentient being to cyclic existence. So this practitioner then says, I must figure out what it's going to take to get out of cyclic existence altogether, because all of these sufferings are unbearable. I'm not willing to have one bit of them. When I look and I search through what Buddha said cyclic existence is, and I look at the fact that we're like buckets turning on a water wheel, according to Chandrakirti, going through the realms of cyclic existence. When I look at that, I understand I would like to stop that water wheel from turning, from taking me from the hell realm to the highest God's realms and back to a human realm, and then to become an ant, and then to become a hungry ghost, and then to become a human again that has to, experience all these horrible things that we have to experience, and the things that we think are so good, that make us so happy, other than the Dharma and the truth, eventually let us down because of impermanence and because of the nature of suffering and so forth. So this practitioner wants out and then looks to the Buddha and says, okay, I know what it takes to get out of the lower realms of cyclic existence. What does it take to get out of the higher realms? So then the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha taught the truth of suffering. So for this practitioner, what is suffering? Suffering is anything that occurs within the 6 realms of cyclic existence. For the medium scope practitioner, he or she looks at suffering in every single way possible, the 8 types of suffering, the 6 types of suffering, the 3 types of suffering, investigates those types of suffering very, very thoroughly, and then looks to figure out what would cause these things, what would cause this dissatisfaction, what would cause this hurt and sadness to have to occur again and again and again, and why does it occur? So then, once he or she has realized the first noble truth and recognized their own suffering, then he or she is starting to get somewhere, according to the Maitreya's sublime continuum. Recognize that you're ill is the first thing you have to do. You have to recognize what the nature of suffering is and what the object of abandonment is if you're going to abandon it. So Maitreya says right in the sublime continuum, first, recognize that you're ill. Recognize the first truth of suffering, the truth of suffering, and understand what that means. Then a practitioner, once they understand the truth of suffering and understand all these horrible things, you would want to know, how do I stop it? So then the Buddha said, this is a superior truth of origin. When we look at the second noble truth, what causes it? Maitreya says, eliminate the cause of the illness in the sublime continuum. What causes the illness? What is it that makes it happen? And when we start to investigate, according to the medium scope practitioner, what makes it happen, it's a distorted view, an ignorant view that gives rise to afflictions of attachment, hatred, and ignorance, that then causes us from that kind of mental deluded state to then act out, causes us to think in a way that's improper, talk in a way that's improper, and physically behave in a way that's improper. And it was stated by the Buddha in that second noble truth of origin that this is a superior truth, because this is something that a being who has seen emptiness and has directly perceived the nature of reality has come to understand as the cause of this cycle. So the cause of this cycle ultimately is this ignorant distortion of reality. And what is this ignorant distortion of reality? It's the grasping at phenomena as being truly established. So when we look at the truth of origin and the root of cyclic existence, according to this medium scope practitioner, we say it's the grasping at true establishment. We say it's this. And then you find different presentations of emptiness in the Hinayana view. And one would say, well, is the view that all phenomena are not truly established a view of the medium scope practitioner? And when we look at the great Indian pandits, they conclude clearly that no matter what one is, whether one is Hinayana or Mahayana, in order for a Hinayanist to be completely free from cyclic existence and to achieve nirvana, he or she has to realize the final view of emptiness. There's no impartial view of reality that allows the afflictive obstructions to be abandoned. One has to understand reality completely in order to get rid of misperception of it. So Chandrakirti and Ari, everyone agrees that even this medium scope practitioner, even though their tenets, when we look at them and start to divide them up and chop it up, may look as though they are not Madhyamika Prasangika tenets, they eventually, due to their analysis and understanding of selflessness of person, see the selflessness of all phenomena as a result of that direct perception. So Aryadeva in the 400 verses says that once you see the emptiness of one, you see the emptiness of all. And this is what Aryadeva is referring to, this idea that all beings who are going to end suffering altogether, no matter what their scope, Mahayana or Hinayana, will need to realize the final view of emptiness to achieve their goals, because the antidote has to annihilate that which gives rise to its opposite. So it's necessary for this medium scope practitioner to understand the nature of reality in a full way. So when we look at how he or she does that, it would be by analyzing what the nature of reality is. And although the second turning of the wheel of Dharma is a Mahayana doctrine and wouldn't be considered a Hinayana doctrine, Aryadeva and Chandrakirti both concur that the emptiness that's realized by a Hinayana Arhat is the same emptiness that's realized in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. So we find this all paths emerging right here. We find the medium scope is needing the second turning of the wheel. The Hinayana needs the Mahayana teachings, because we say the Mahayana teachings are the Chittamantra and Madhyamika view when we divide view into Hinayana and Mahayana. But all of the great Mahayana pandits are saying that the Hinayanists hold that high view too. So stop. If we're logicians, we have to understand that the afflictive obstructions have to be abandoned only by a pure antidote, not an impure partial antidote. So this practitioner realizes this full, complete view, although they're missing one thing. So the medium scope practitioner has this disgust with cyclic existence, wants to definitely emerge from cyclic existence, recognizes how it occurs, cyclic existence, and then is told by the Buddha that it can stop. And then the Buddha says, this is how. You rely on the three highest higher trainings, the highest higher training in ethics, concentration, and wisdom. And the Buddha said that the highest higher training in ethics would be, if we compare it to this example, if you ever wanted to cut down a tree, and if cutting down a tree was compared to cutting the root of ignorance, right? Why would these three highest higher trainings be important? How would we compare it? Well, the highest higher training in ethics is similar to needing a foundation. Without the foundation of ethics, nothing can emerge. No compassion can emerge, no concentration can emerge, no true wisdom can emerge. Partial understandings may emerge, but no true understandings without the foundation of ethics can emerge. And concentration has a very, very clear connection with ethics. It says that how do we cut the root of cyclic existence? It's like cutting a tree. You need a firm basis. Ethics is that basis. You need a firm body to cut a tree. You also, in order to cut a tree, would need an arm to do the cutting. So the arm to do the cutting is likened to concentration, meditative absorption, the ability to direct the mind towards one object and not waver from that meditative stabilization. So it's said that, you know, in order to cut a tree, yeah, you need a stable body and you need a good arm. In order to cut the root of cyclic existence, you need the foundation of ethics and you need the concentration. But without this final view of wisdom, you aren't able to cut the root of cyclic existence. Just like if that strong body and arm didn't have a chainsaw or an axe, right? One wouldn't be able to cut down that tree. So likewise, when we look at cutting the root of cyclic existence, it's compared to this idea of cutting down a tree and the necessity of having these three components, this ethics that's flawless and pure and clean, that's then coupled with this meditative absorption, which lacks excitement and dullness and rides somewhere right in the middle of clarity between excitement and dullness. And what is it clearly looking at? It's clearly looking at emptiness. It's clearly looking at the nature of reality. And that's what the wisdom is. So the Buddha said that in relying on these three higher trainings, you could cut the root of cyclic existence. If you could be ethical and you could learn to focus your mind and focus it on emptiness, you would get rid of the root of cyclic existence and the afflictive obstructions would be removed and you'd be in an abiding nirvana. So you'd be able to be in this nirvana where you no longer had any of the sufferings of cyclic existence. So the intelligent practitioner starts to really get attracted to this idea, right? That, wow, you know, I can get rid of this altogether. We can only kind of experience things from our side. We can relate to others, but our most strong experiences are from our side. But what this next practitioner does is very interesting. He or she takes this advice that they've been given in the medium scope and takes this understanding of the 6 realms of cyclic existence, the cause of the 6 realms of cyclic existence, the miseries of the cyclic existence, and the sadness that he or she knows is true, and then starts to think about other people for a minute and starts to think about, wow, my mother has to experience the same sadness I do, right? You know, my dog has to experience the same sadness that I do. And you look at all the things that we do in life to try to remove the suffering of our friends and loved ones, you know, even from a dog, right? We do all this stuff, you know, buy the special food with a special topping and get the special toys, you know, to try to remove the suffering of our animals because we want to make them happy, right? We see this close connection that we have. And we're already there because, like the Dalai Lama said, that there's some root in human nature of compassion that's there. It's there. That begins, right, with the mother's love with the child. And it's Mother's Day, so appropriate, right? There's some suckling that takes place from the child that shows there's this kind of warmth and compassion and the mother giving the milk that's kind of beginning this process of love and compassion that's serving as a seed for that child. So this practitioner is taking that little seed and saying, oh my God, my life is horrible and life's will be horrible and life's have been horrible, right? And looks at all of these things and says, so are theirs and so will theirs be. And starts to then say, well, what would it take for others to be free? And then this kind of more competent, broader-minded practitioner says, well, what would it take then, you know, for everyone to not have to suffer? And then the Buddha chimes in. And at the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, says to this practitioner, when we look at the perfection of wisdom teachings, that you have to do everything that I said to all the Hinayanists. And that's why we say the teachings for beings of common with beings of small capacity and medium capacity. Hinayana being at the teachings for beings of medium capacity, but relying on also the teachings for beings of small capacity. And then the teachings for beings of great capacity were these new things Buddha was going to present to these practitioners at the second turning of the wheel. But he told them that the way it was all going to work was to understand how to present the first turning of the wheel to all sentient beings. It was very, very interesting how we see the interweaving of all of these different teachings. So the Buddha, at the second turning of the wheel, we say the Heart Sutra, where he presented the Mahayana, he told everyone, basically, if we look at the explicit and implicit teachings, that the root of cyclic existence is the grasping at true establishment. So he said, if we want to instruct all sentient beings, you're going to have to apply all of these kind of bolder, larger understandings to what I've already told you. And you'll have to interpret that first turning of the wheel through the lens of this. It wasn't that you needed to discard it and now you go to here. It was, in this lens, you were first looking at it like this, and this lens now does this. And that's what the Buddha said. He said, now I'll tell you what the problem is with the medium scope. I'll tell you what the problem is with the Hinayana vehicle. Yes, I promise you can go and abide in nirvana. This is true. But while you're there, realize you still have imprints of your afflictions that are there. And what those imprints do is they keep you from being a fully realized Buddha. They allow you to end your own suffering, and they allow you to just stay in this state of bliss, but you're still have imprints. You're still not perfect, even though it feels that way. Even though it feels really good, feels perfect, you aren't perfect. And the only way you can become perfect is if that continuum that you have, that we've taught, travels from lifetime to lifetime, is stainless. And I'm telling you now, in the medium scope and Hinayanists, that you still are stained. You still have stains. You're very highly realized. And these things you've realized will make you a sharp capacity when you practice the Mahayana. But you are stained and you have not realized everything that you need to realize. So the Buddha says, I know how to get rid of these stains, and I call them obstructions to omniscience. I call them that which keeps you from being omniscient, that obstructs you from it. And here is the method. You do everything that I've told you thus far. You rely on the ethics that abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities. You acknowledge your downfalls. You go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. You practice the 3 highest higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. And then you practice the Bodhisattva path. You practice the pathways which understand that all sentient beings have suffering, just like yourself. All sentient beings want happiness, just like yourself. How nice it would be if somehow I could not only be free of suffering for myself, but how nice it would be if I could participate in the removal of others' suffering. So now this is really where, the mind goes from a very, very small thing. This is why there's no problem with Hinayana and Mahayana, lesser vehicle, greater vehicle. Watch what the mind's about to do. The mind's about to go, I want to free myself from suffering. 2, I want to free a number of sentient beings I can't count and myself from suffering. So this is a very, very big mind that one is now trying to cultivate. Very, very big mind. One's going from this scope of just wanting to end one's own suffering to now wanting to end one's own suffering and freeing every single being that you can't even count from their suffering. So this is going to take some work, the Buddha said, to go from being so self-centered to an idea of cherishing others. This is going to take work. So then the Buddha said, take all of those things that I've taught, and then realize this. So then the Buddha taught the Heart Sutra, and explicitly we find the teachings on emptiness of the Madhyamika Prasangika view of emptiness that you hold as you do anything while you're practicing within the Mahayana Dharma. If you're doing it at its utmost capacity, if you're, engaging in, giving, being generous, giving a dollar to a poor person, you are recognizing that you're empty, the act of giving is empty, and the person you're giving it to is empty. So this view of the Mahayana at its highest level is always imbued with and participating with the Madhyamika Prasangika view in order for it to truly bring about kind of an internal change that could get rid of, at the end, imprints of ignorance, right? So explicitly this emptiness is being taught, but implicitly, according to Jayangape Lodru's wonderful commentary, Rinpoche was so generous to give to us, the 5 Mahayana paths are taught within it. And then for those bodhisattvas of sharp capacities, they don't even need the Heart Sutra. They just need that mantra. That mantra that's in there, that means the 5 paths, Jayangape Lodru said. So that mantra is just a summary of the Heart Sutra thrown in there for bodhisattvas of sharp capacity, to be able to understand the 5 paths and understand the Madhyamika view of emptiness that saturates those 5 paths by a being of sharp capacity, that mantra. Sorry if I misspoke or went a little sideways. So in the Heart Sutra, it's stated that at the path of accumulation is where the bodhisattva becomes a person becomes a bodhisattva. So when we look at the teachings for beings of great capacity, they begin at that place. They begin at the path of accumulation, if we're calling them Mahayana teachings, because the only entrance to the Mahayana is bodhicitta. The only practitioner of Mahayanist is a bodhisattva. We could be aspiring to be Mahayanist, aspiring to be bodhisattvas, aspire to have bodhicitta. But when we look at the real entrance, it's bodhicitta. So the path of accumulation, according to the Heart Sutra's commentary, begins with that realization of bodhicitta. And we can also, just as a side note, when we look at the Hinayana teachings, there are also 5 paths. And their first path begins with renunciation. Makes sense, right? They aspire to definitely emerge, then they realize emptiness, and then they, practice until they've abandoned the afflictive obstructions through those 5 pathways. The Mahayanist now has a person of great capacity that wants to free all sentient beings, and then begins to learn how to do that, learn how to become a Mahayanist. This person says, this sounds like the best deal. I can fulfill my own needs in a complete way. I won't have any kind of stains in my consciousness, and I can fulfill all sentient beings' needs in a complete way. So this practitioner finds to try to equalize this idea of friends, enemies, and neutrals, and then becomes a bodhisattva by way of 2 practices, either combined or done separately. One practice is passed down from Lord Atisha, called the equalizing and exchanging self with others practices of recognizing all sentient beings are mothers, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, the love through the force of attraction, great compassion, the extraordinary attitude, and then the result, realization of bodhicitta. So this is a meditation that one does in relation to friends, enemies, and neutrals, recognizing that my friends have been my mother, my enemies have been my mother, my neutrals have been my mother, and I equally want to benefit all of them because they've all equally been kind to me. I can't remember it, but my continuum of consciousness is the same continuum. So kindness done yesterday, I've forgotten about, is still kindness. Mother who was my mother in a previous time is still mother, and I've just forgotten it. So we start to recognize this equality of sentient beings and their relationship to us. They've been our friends. They've been our every relationship we can possibly have. And even the friends that we have right now, we can't say are stable. They may be our enemies tomorrow. The only thing that we can rely upon as true is truth. And impermanence, we can't say if something is impermanent, what it is today will be tomorrow. It's just illogical. So what we can rely on are these meditations to start to become more realistic and more loving and kind to each other, so that we ourselves can become of utmost help to all sentient beings, because we can't really do anything more than their karma will allow. But the Buddhas know what a sentient being's karma will really allow and what would be best for their karma. So there is that need. So the Bodhisattva becomes a Bodhisattva by realizing bodhicitta through possibly that way, or the lojang teachings that Rinpoche was so kind to impart on us, the 8 verses for mind training and the 7-point thought transformation and the wheel of sharp weapons, and going into sometimes the mind training like the rays of the sun, in order for us to understand that the self-cherishing attitude is the downfall of all sentient beings. And that it says, in the Guru Puja, it calls it the chronic disease of the self-cherishing attitude. And in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, it says that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas cherish sentient beings. Others, cherish others. We cherish ourselves. Let's look at what the difference is. Look at the difference in the kind of being. I can look at the difference between Rinpoche and myself. Rinpoche cherished others. Rinpoche only had the thought to try to remove our suffering somehow, and knew the only way he could do it was through teaching, because his teacher, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni, said the Buddhas don't wash away the sins with water. We don't remove suffering with our hands. We don't give you our realizations. We can only teach the Dharma. So Rinpoche's teacher, told him the only thing he could do for us in order to help us. And, the Buddhists teach us in so many ways, either by example or by giving us an instruction in our ear. But the Buddhists teach us in many ways. And when I look at Rinpoche's activities of 25 years that I knew, I watched him cherish others. I watched him put others' needs before his own in order to propagate the Dharma at all times, under every circumstance and no matter what. And that's something that I really, really think is amazing, to see that he had this self-cherishing attitude kind of wrapped up in conventional ways by appearance. It seemed like he really understood it was a chronic disease and that it needed to be abandoned. And he taught us through the lojang that we needed to shift this idea. Now, at these ordinary beings, as Shantideva says, cherish themselves. The Buddhists cherish others. So what does that mean? If we could somehow switch this strong investment we have in our own plans, ideals, and needs to looking at how we would act if we were fulfilling the person in front of us' needs, and what it would feel like if everyone we came in contact with, we were trying to figure out how to make them as happy as we usually try to make ourselves. So we're not trying to, a lot of the lojang is misunderstood and misrepresented, and thank God Rinpoche was so clear. We aren't pretending we're them. We're being us, acting the way we should towards them, cherishing them. So we're not shifting like we're walking around imagining I'm someone else. I'm taking that intensity of self-cherishing and turning it towards wanting them to have the happiness. So I'm not just taking it on one or two people. I'm looking at everyone and saying, now I'm in the grocery store. How would I behave right now if I wanted the grocery store clerk, whatever's to say, right, to have a better experience, from me, and have some experiences that at least lets them have a little bit of more faith in humanity, right? Faith in that possibility that seed of compassion still exists. Everything you see on the news isn't our nature only. Our nature is clear. Our nature is whatever we turn it into. That's what karma says. Emptiness makes that all possible. So the person at the grocery store can see that Buddha nature being represented in person. Recently I heard Yansei Rinpoche saying that the anger and the Buddha nature, don't think that's a different seed. You have to see it's the same seed that's there. And you have to understand your Buddha nature is just crying, right? Like when you're angry, your Buddha nature is just saying, ah, like it's not, our Buddha nature, when Rinpoche talked about, the emptiness of the mind and the mind itself, also talked about the good things that are Buddha, right? When we're engaging in that, or when we're mirroring that, that's Buddha nature as well, so it's really interesting, to say, am I coming in contact with folks and representing, what the Buddha would say would make sense in terms of what I've learned. So that's how we apply these Mahayana teachings, and we learn to stop cherishing ourselves, and we learn that other cherishing is the only key to our salvation. It's the only way to truly be self-centered is to cherish others, because the only way we can fulfill all of our complete needs and unstain our mind is by cherishing others. So a truly smart, self-centered person would say, hey, at first, if I really want to be the best, I've got to help others, so it's like fulfilling the needs of others fulfills your own needs simultaneously in a very complete way. So the Heart Sutra presents the implicit and explicit teachings to show one how one first becomes a bodhisattva, and then how he or she starts to stabilize their meditation and starts to have a union of calm abiding and special insight on the path of preparation, and that has as its object of observation emptiness, and then turns this inferential understanding that happens and is concluded at the path of preparation into a direct perception of emptiness on the path of seeing, and then refines through many, many, many more direct perception of emptiness, his or her purity of mind, to the point where there's nothing more to learn, and the smallest of small imprints, which is an obstruction to omniscience, is removed through the completion stage of highest yoga tantra. So that completion stage is the path of no more learning. There's no more to learn. Now you have the resultant result. We call tantra the resultant vehicle. It's because we're taking the result as path. We're doing deity yoga, and we're meditating on ourselves as if we have completed in order to become. So that completion stage completes that process, and the result of it is we are the deity. And we are a Buddha who now has omniscience and understands conventional phenomena and understands ultimate phenomena simultaneously, and has love and compassion for all sentient beings, because he or she has, by way of the 7-point cause and effect, abandoned the self-cherishing attitude and become, a Buddha, or through the lojang teachings of giving and taking practice, or the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice, has become a Buddha. And how did they get to there? How does this bodhisattva able to give and imagine they're taking on the suffering of others and giving all their root happiness to all sentient beings, and given this in exchange of one's own happiness and the taking on of others' suffering. How does one get there? Well, one gets there by understanding one's own suffering. One has to understand suffering in a complete way in order to do tonglen, when we talk about in lojang teaching, giving and taking practice. When you're imagining all sentient beings in the space in front of you, and you're imagining that they're engaged and they're having their various types of suffering, and you imagine that you're taking on their suffering in the form of a black light through your right nostril, and you imagine that suffering shedding off of them, and you imagine that they're being turned into these pure beings that don't have any suffering, you have to know what's in the black light, right? You have to know what you're pulling from sentient beings. You have to know what a pervasive compounded suffering is, because there are sentient beings that don't have the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, etc. They are in a formless realm, but they have pervasive compounded suffering because they aren't free from cyclic existence. What does that mean? What are you talking about? Well, you just said you want to be a bodhisattva and take on the suffering of all sentient beings. Mustn't you know what you're taking on? Mustn't you know what that is? How would you find out what that is? You'd have to study it and know what it is for yourself. And when you're giving all forms of happiness through your left nostril in the form of a white light, and you're imagining that all sentient beings receive it and are purified, become Buddhas, you imagine that your work is done each time, and then you imagine that it goes back. So you're shifting these, you're doing these practices of shifting focuses. When you're giving this light, you have to know what happiness is. You have to know what a Buddha is, right? You have to know what things they would be free from. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. You have to know what would cause happiness. And that's why you're not only giving them happiness in this meditation, you're giving them all of your root virtues. Because you found out in the small scope, virtue causes happiness, non-virtue causes suffering. Here are what virtues are. These are the 3 virtues of the body. These are the 4 virtues of the speech. These are the 3 virtues of the mind. And then as we got more and more impressive in view, we started talking about Bodhisattva's virtues. And these virtues were all about cherishing others. So all of the root virtues, you need to know what you're giving sentient beings to turn them into happy. It's not magic you're doing. You're doing meditation to change your mind. It's not just some magic, like once I do the lights enough times, then the lights will just turn me into a bodhisattva. No, it's an intense meditation that's going on about taking on the sufferings, the 8 sufferings and the 6 sufferings. And then ultimately, taking on the origin of suffering, which is that, what's the most appropriate way, is the releases of energies that cause us to be born again and again and again, according to some of the Tantra systems, right? We're taking on that too. When we look at the truth of suffering, if we're doing it at a highest level, I'll do it real quick because this information is all available. When you're doing in the form of a black light, are you imagining, that the channels that are disintegrating on a daily basis that eventually won't hold the winds, are being restored? Are you imagining that we have, what I mean? Like this meditation is done with intelligence. It's not just a video game. It's done with an understanding of what at the grossest level suffering is that you're taking away, and what's the most subtle level of suffering you're taking away. What's the most gross form of root virtue you're giving them, but what's the most subtle form of root virtue? If you look at highest yoga tantra, Rinpoche has taught this. The most subtle form of virtue is stopping the emission, right? You're stopping, like what we think when we see tantric deities doing or sex or something. It's stopping the emission of orgasm. And when we look at, what root virtue is the highest root virtue in highest yoga tantra we could give, it would be that. Is our Tonglen meditation real Tonglen meditation? Or are we playing a video game and doing lights and having fun because we emerged onto something that was kind of interesting? Most of us didn't show up here because it was interesting. We showed up here because we had suffering and wanted to end it. Had a tragedy, our life was a tragedy, or, our childhood was a tragedy, or we see people around us in tragedy. It generally wasn't because everything was going swimmingly and I just wanted to find out, how to kind of have some more fun. So I'm going to take a whole bunch of time to just have, it's never like that I find when I start to speak with you personally. I always find there's things that, like mine, that drove you here. So the one thing that Rinpoche was able to do was to show us how this net I just kind of threw out to all of you makes sense together. How all teachings lead to Buddhahood that the Buddha ever gave. That's the greatness of the teaching in the Lam Rim, that all teachings are not don't contradict themselves. You know, they're all instructions to be practiced. You know, we need to understand what the teacher was talking about and not abandon Dharma, because the Dharma is the only thing that can free us from suffering. There is no alternative means. You know, there's no way. We only go for refuge to the Buddha because we believe that. If we believed there was another way to get free from suffering, we wouldn't be Buddhist. We wouldn't go for refuge to a Buddha. So, you know, I hope that gave some people something to think about, you know, how you can look at, you know, the Four Noble Truths and the great vehicle and the small scope, and kind of use each of those topics to analyze the other topic. Because we realize that a Hinayyanist or a small scope practitioner finds the excellent qualities of the Buddha to be something that they go for refuge to. And the excellent qualities of the Buddha and the kind of familiarization with them is what makes the Bodhisattva want to be a Bodhisattva. You know, so it's really important to understand that these three scopes, the Four Noble Truths, the Heart Sutra, and then kind of, you know, within the Heart Sutra, looking at the lojang teachings, the mind training teachings, you really be able to find a complete path. You know, it says in the Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Duden, this working basis of a human form endowed with all of its liberties is superior to a wish-granting gem. Moreover, such is only obtained this one time. Difficult to acquire and easily lost, it passes like a flash of lightning in the sky. Considering how easily this can happen at any time, and realizing that all worldly activities are as immaterial as chaff, you must try to take advantage of its essential significance at all times. Day and night, I, the yogi, have practiced in this same way. If you all too seek liberation, please practice the same way. So this is what Lama Tsongkhapa presented, and there's no shortcut, unfortunately. There's just, you know, pounding the sesame seeds into tahini, right? Pounding out these imperfections out of our mind, purifying our mind of these negativities, starting with the coarse ones and ending with the most subtle ones. And the only way that we can do that is to continually hear Dharma and continually understand, you know, understand what things like the Sublime Continuum say. I didn't finish quoting it. It says, recognize that you are ill, eliminate the cause of illness, attain health, rely on an remedy. Likewise, you should recognize, eliminate, attain, and rely upon suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path, respectively. That's in a Mahayana text, talking about the Four Noble Truths that were turned during the Hinayana turning of the wheel of Dharma. So it's really important to just get rid of these labels, look at the stages of the path to enlightenment, right? And I just read something interesting. Look at the stages of the path to enlightenment as a mirror and think about your own mind. And then look outside of your mind and how you're relating to the people around you and see if the Dharma is working. And that was something that's really profound for me. And I will try on a daily basis to, you know, act more like a bodhisattva so I can become one, so that I can, you know, eventually help all sentient beings and be able to, you know, emanate bodies and know what those bodies should do, as opposed to what my dumb mind thinks is the best thing. You know, so our goal really, if we, you know, I was speaking with Geshe Aga, and I'll share this joke with you. We were just talking about Buddhist centers and, you know, how do you move forward in the most healthy way? And, you know, a lot of Buddhist centers throughout the United States have had issues and so forth. And it has not been a clean road. It's been rocky. And Geshe Aga said to me, well, you know, it's okay. You know, you have different centers and so forth. But really, I think that if you're honest with yourself, based on human beings, if there's 20 people at a center, you probably need 20 centers. So there's a lot of wisdom in that. We all come to the table with our own pleasant mix of afflictions and act out on our own pleasant mix of afflictions. Every one of us. None of us can say we don't do that unless we're enlightened, or unless you're all, whatever, y'all, know what I mean. So if we can try to come together with like a common thing, and that would be like, well, we know we're all kind of screwed up, but the only thing that'll fix us is this, right? That's what seems to work. And anytime it's anything but that, it doesn't seem to work, because we all, have a diversity of opinions and ideas. We're all human beings who have experiences in life and put emphasis on things and on emphasis on others. But wouldn't it be interesting if we all realized that most of that stuff is samsara thinking, and most of it is attached thinking, grasping at true establishment, and is not clairvoyant thinking, is not the thinking of a Buddha who knows all phenomena. So why don't we figure out how to fix that mess together? And Rinpoche showed us how to do that so clearly. So I just want to thank you for allowing me to do this. Although there is much merit to be gained from listening to or reciting even once this brief manner of Atisha's text, and which can be concluded the essential points of all the scriptural pronouncements, yet it is certain that you will amass even greater waves of beneficial collections from actually teaching and studying the sacred Dharma contained therein. Therefore, you should consider the points for doing this properly. So I want to thank you for allowing me to be involved in the process, my process of getting rid of these afflictions that are so deep within my continuum, that I saw Rinpoche as an example of purity, that gave me hope, that I could become like that, with a person who, was an inch away from my face, the last 2 years, every day almost. And I just want to say thank you to all of you. And please go to Tara Mantra Facebook. There's like 100 pictures on there now, of just so many wonderful things that we got to do, with the parties and Tibetan parties, and meeting with, individuals, and meeting with Tibetan doctors. And you'll be able to see just so many pictures. And then looking at the Chenrezig site, there's so many pictures. And I was speaking with one of the Jamyan Choling nuns 2 days ago. Rinpoche made a large donation to them. And I was speaking with them, and they were saying that they look at the picture, and it's, Rinpoche is not gone. He's with us right now, but so sad he chose to go to nirvana, right? And leave us. So they're all praying like, come back, hurry up from the Pure Land. The nuns have such great devotion to him, and they're going to be doing puja on Sakar Dawa, I believe. It's not all set up yet, but either on Zoom or I don't know if Zoom or Facebook Live, which we'll all know when, and it'll be in honor of Rinpoche. And each of the nuns will get 500 rupees during that. That's already happened at Goel Kamsen. It's happening at Goel Kamsen in Ganden, and that's actually happening in Parakamsen as well. Parakamsen is where Khenso Pema Jetson and Gen Nemo are from. So we're making large offerings to those monks as well, 500 rupees to everyone. And then Khenso Pema Jetson's attendant is still alive, and he's getting a large offering. So we're making our way through all the things Rinpoche wished to have made way through, if that makes sense. And I just want you to all know how many centime. It's going to be about 500 monks and nuns. Each got 500 rupees, within a week or so, once all the pujas are done, because they're doing different days and stuff. But it's really, really neat that each one of them knows that this is from Khenso Geshe Wandak. So now we're creating connections. Rinpoche used to say when we threw bread for the birds that they'd be our students, because we're giving them things. How wonderful that is, that each of them, when they're going to have their tea, or go buy cake or buy something, not all of them, right? But maybe some of them are thinking, wow, how nice Khenso Geshe Wandak is, right? And rejoicing in his bodhisattva deeds while he's already passed 2 months, 3 months later into nirvana. It was too obvious to me, right when he passed, everyone, they're doing a million things, but it was, I thought, unique to wait till after the 49 days when everyone starts to forget, and then remind everybody about what a great master Rinpoche was. So there's a method to all madnesses. A lot of times it's madness. Maybe it's skillful means, maybe, who knows? I had to become a Buddha because I'm not sure. So I've got to do this stuff. So thank you, all of you, for allowing me to do this. And if anybody has any questions, I have no idea what time it is. I know I ripped through, wow, it's not even as late as I thought. So yeah, I don't know anything more that Rinpoche taught than what I just said. And I could have just said it for 10 years, but I chose to do it for an hour instead. Anybody have any questions? And so wonderful, it's Mother's Day. I really, really encourage you to look at the 7-point cause and effect training for bodhicitta, where you recognize all sentient beings are your mothers, all are your kin, are your fathers, are your brothers, are your sisters, you know, are your wives, are your husbands. You have to look at it like that too. Asanga talks about that. You know, don't pigeonhole yourself because now you're just attaching again. Look at it in a much broader sense. Make it big. Anytime you can make it bigger, it'll help later to make it bigger. But you know, you first get this idea that your friends, enemies, and neutrals, you all equally want to benefit. And then you're like, wow, not only do I equally want to benefit those people I looked at incorrectly, they actually were like the friends, every one of them. So it's like a readjusting it. It's like shaking up samsara and readjusting it in a way. You know, it's like turning everyone into your friend. You know, it's what a bodhisattva is doing. But not friend that you're attached to like normal folk, you know, this special love that's immeasurable and this special compassion that's immeasurable. But it's coming from that place. No questions? Oh, Alessandra, please.
Hi, so it's not really a question. First, I want to say happy and healing Mother's Day to all. And I want to thank you, Jeff, for all that you provide us through your work with Rinpoche and through the center and these teachings. Thank you, because it means a great deal to me and I deeply appreciate it. That's all.
Thank you. You mean a great deal to me. Alessandra, it didn't go unnoticed that you sent card after card after card with just wonderful notes on the inside and outside and poetry, and many, many of the pictures that you drew, we put up in Rinpoche's room right in the window because they were always like very colorful and the lights would go through them and light them up. So I just want to say that each and every little thing that each of you did throughout this process and didn't shout from the rooftops that you were doing it, did not go unnoticed. And I really rejoice in that true faith that I could see you have in Rinpoche and the lineage. And yeah, it's on the altar actually. You know, I really, yeah, we couldn't make it magically just appear there. So, right. You know, this was impromptu, you know, like, so we really, really just appreciated everything, every little thing. You know, people would text and say, please tell Rinpoche this. And I would tell Rinpoche exactly that, you know, and you were someone who just quietly, continuously just sent love this way. And I just want to say we felt it.
Thank you. Thank you. And when I say I appreciate you, I appreciate all of you. So thank you.
Of course.
Yes.
It's dependent origination. This all comes about through a collection of causes and conditions when we're looking at this occurrence that make this possible, right? You know, I have some information, you know, maybe I have some more than you, maybe I don't. I'm not sure. A lot of you have been around as long as I have, right? I can't be sure that I don't have clairvoyance, but, you know, I have some training. I have some special training that I've been able to luckily have, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate that you see value in that, at least from just being able to familiarize your mind with something you already know, you find value. So thank you. And also, just to let you know, I'm also giving talks various different places in the future. But on Thursday nights, I'm giving talks on what you'll find is Buddha's Center, BUDDHAS Center.com. We're just setting up a platform so that I can, put my teachings there and so forth. And then others will be able to see those. And then hopefully we'll be able to not, link to the Chen Rezig site, so that, the teachings that I present will lead people right to Rinpoche's teachings, but without any confusion or any kind of idea that, there's some other intention. So I'm really happy to present that to all of you. And there'll be a Zoom link that you'll be able to find on buddhascenter.com. And this is a work in progress, the website. So don't run there now and think, whoa, it was put together just in an hour. For the purpose of being able to give expanded teachings, because so many of you are asking for expanded teachings, and we're teaching bodhicitta through Panchen Son Andrapa's general meaning of perfection on Thursday, and I think that really complements the Sunday teachings where however they may go or wherever they may be. So I really look forward to seeing all of you on Thursday night to talk about bodhicitta. We're going to talk about bodhicitta very slowly and very thoroughly. In a manner that I'm very excited about, with the aid of Geshe Aga in India. And he said with the aid of any other Geshe he has to find if he doesn't know the answer. Okay, so let's do the concluding prayers. I'm sorry, Priscilla has her hand up. It's hard for me to see hands for some reason.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you went through today. It's nice to see how the different pieces of different teachings fit together, and there were bits of that in what you said today. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you. It was my pleasure. Yeah, my pleasure. I'm hoping that you can discuss Tonglen in some more detail at some time. I received training in that probably about 15 years ago, and I have some documents that we had discussed this of what I'm reading and studying now, that looks at it a little bit differently from what you described today. Okay. So if I can send that to you, it's an Alexander Berzin translation. So I think it's a valid and clear translation, or I wouldn't bother reading it. I appreciate it. Thank you. So I'll send that to you, and then I just like to I would like clarity so I know what I'm doing. Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the Tonglen tradition, there's like 20 different instructions. There are so many different varying descriptions of the same kind of process. Some start with taking on your own suffering and getting yourself to a place of equanimity in relation to your own ability to help others, and then starting, by giving and then taking. Some say, first take, then give. The 7-point mind training has different variations of that. Some say that you take on the suffering in the form of like taking hairs off of them, like you're imagining you're shaving it off of them. Some say it's in lights, right? And then some say they turn into Buddhas. Some say they just are happy, sentient beings. It depends on if you're using a tantric emphasis when you're doing the Tonglen or not too. So I'm so excited to see that document and see, because he had great teachers. He had the most amazing teacher, Berzin did, and I ripped through Berzin's archives a lot. I love Alexander Berzin.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he did the translation with some other people, and then I believe it's one of his teachers who has done this commentary. This document, I think, is 60 something pages long.
Wonderful, wonderful.
It's really good. And the thing that I have experienced with Tonglen is that the practice itself is simple and extraordinarily profound. So just if anyone else is going to do that, or if you're going to have us do that.
I think I've read the Berzin one too. It talks about as you inhale, you imagine that the suffering you're taking on starts a fire of your self-cherishing attitude, right? And actually gets rid of that, like that practice actually burns away your self-cherishing attitude and transforms your ability into the ability, your normal self-cherishing ability into the ability to give love out of the left nostril. So yeah, I'm excited to see that commentary, and maybe I can incorporate that into some of my own practice if I don't already do it. So thank you.
It's yeah, I found it very helpful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Priscilla's been studying Buddhism for a very, very long time. So she's, you know, a wealth of knowledge with a lot of reference points. So thank you. Yes,
like
Karen.
50 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jeff. Good morning. Thank you. I just wanted to share with the group. I spent last evening, not personally, but in a very large theater with Eckhart Tolle, and it was really very informative. About 2.5 hour talk on being in the present, and so it was very informative. And I just wanted to share with people to always try to remember to be in the present and how important it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great advice. That's what we have is this moment. The last one's done. This moment's here, and the next one we don't know if we have. So this is the space that we are practitioners within. There's nowhere else to practice but this space of the moment. And sometimes we forget that. And yeah, that's what causes a lot of distractions. So thank you for that.
Sorry, I can't get my hand to go down, so I'm all set.
That's okay. Everybody put your hand, no. So we're not going to end like that. We'll end with the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer and so forth. And again, thank you all of you. Happy Mother's Day. And, you know, may through the force of this teaching, which is a condensed teaching of the Lam Rim, showing how it relates to the Four Noble Truths, how it could relate to lojang, how it could relate to the Heart Sutra, and the 5 paths according to the Mahayana. Through the force of this truth that has been presented, may we all become Buddhas for the sake of sentient beings, and may we quickly meet with Khensa Rinpoche again, you know, in this life and in all of our lifetimes until we achieve complete Buddhahood. So, you know, through the force of this condensed teaching, may I be able to finish the stages of the generation and completion stage of highest yoga tantra in this lifetime, or one very quickly after this. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lojang Drakpa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. And now we'll read the source of all my good, which connects us with Rinpoche and connects us with the entire path that was just presented in a very condensed manner, but it could be understood over many years in an expanded manner by looking at all of the 5 great texts that Rinpoche was a master of, the understanding of the Pramanavartika Karika, the understanding of the Prajnaparamita, the understanding of the Madhyamaka, the understanding of the Vinaya, and the understanding of the Abhidharma. So we could have explained today's teaching in accordance with all of those great 5, by using all of those great 5 texts, and done it in a curriculum they call the Geshe degree that takes 20 years or so, but we chose to take an hour or so to have the same exact content that those Geshes come to understand and come to know what the summary that we did actually means. So let's read the source of all my good, and then you're free to go. The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way, or her in the proper way, is the very root of the path. Grant me then to serve and follow him or her with all my strength and reverence. Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddhist teachings. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I am not well trained in the 3 moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the Bodhisattva vows. Grant that I may quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, the other which analyzes the perfect meaning in the correct way. Grant that once I have practiced well, the path shared, and become a vessel that is worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. Bless me to know with genuine certainty that when I've entered thus, the cause that gives me both the high attainments is to keep my pledges and my vows most pure. Grant me then to always keep them, even if it costs my life. Bless me next to realize as well as I can the crucial points of both the steps, the essence of the secret ways. Bless me then to practice as the holy ones have spoken, put in all my effort in and never leaving off the practice of the 4 times highest that there is. Bless me, grant me that the spiritual friend who shows me this good road and all my true companions in this quest live long and fruitful lives. Bless and grant me that the rain of obstacles, things within me or outside me that could stop me now, stop and end forever. In all my lives, may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path, and reach then quickly the place where I become myself, the one who holds the diamond. And again, everyone, don't forget that they're talking, Lama Tsongkhapa in this text is making this prayer so that we're making this prayer. So I become a Buddha. So I become myself, the one who holds the diamond, because I can only hold the diamond if I practice these things that were just mentioned. You know, once I practice well the path shared and become a vessel that is worthy, may I, enter the highest door, right? The holiest of all ways to enter, So it's saying like, through these practices, may I hold that diamond. And it's saying you can, because you have Buddha nature. Lama Tsongkhapa felt that every time a path was presented, it had to be a complete path and never be, satisfied with partial instructions and incomplete paths. So I feel today we've presented the summary points of the complete path. So thank you. Have a wonderful day, all of you. Thank you. Yeah.